Welcome, my friends. I'm Dave Champion, and this is my extraordinary co-host, Bill Carnes, and together we are totally unprepared. I think there's really, this week...
There's only one story right
That's
now.
right. There's all sorts of things we could talk about, but there's only one that's commanding everybody's attention this week.
So, Dave, if you drive 15 miles an hour over the speed limit,
Yes.
we all expect that you're probably going to get stopped and cited for that.
Perhaps, yes.
Okay. If I drive, let's say, 100 miles an hour over the speed limit, and along the way I'm driving over babies
Right.
and killing them,
Yeah.
and then I'm told, you know what, you did this, that, and the other, which ain't all that cool.
But it was only carelessness on your part.
It was carelessness on your part, but we haven't really seen anything like this before, so we're not going to file charges, buddy.
Yeah, because what prosecutor could rationally file charges against you for killing all those babies? Because it was merely carelessness.
Right.
Yeah.
Which was far more egregious than your 15 miles an hour.
Right.
So that's the case that we have with Hillary Clinton. 110 instances of knowingly sending emails in and out on unsecured servers, violating everything to do with what you knew about that communication, and the Justice Department saying, it's okay, we're not going to prosecute. I happen to know of a guy who is in a, was part of an elite military unit who needed to charge his phone. So he plugged it in, and the USB charging that he was going didn't go directly into the phone, came through a computer, and just had it there to charge. Someone saw that.
While he was a member of that elite unit.
While he was a member of this elite unit.
Who deals with a lot of intel issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Has high clearance level and such as that. He essentially lost his career over that.
Because of the breach of intel security.
Potential breach. There was no actual
right.
breach, but there was a potential breach. Lost his security clearance, was removed out of that unit, has no career advancement whatsoever, and is now doing his last 2 or 3 years before he's 20, basically writing a desk because of that. Now, there was no breach, but there could have been, right? So just merely having that server at your place would normally get anyone else prosecuted, let alone all of the breaches of security.
Well, let's look at David Petraeus. Okay, now I'm no Petraeus fan. Okay, I've done a number of stories in the erstwhile Dave Champion show about what a dirty so-and-so Petraeus has been and how he's lied to the American people. Nevertheless, in the context of the Hillary thing, he was prosecuted for the same felony. It was now they plea bargained it down to a misdemeanor. But he was originally going to be prosecuted on the same felony that Hillary Clinton should be prosecuted under. And yet his issue, I think, was less egregious, and let me explain. He provided notebooks that contained classified information to the gal that he was seeing. He was having an extramarital affair, and she was a reporter who was going to be writing a book about the intelligence community and Petraeus and so forth. And Petraeus had a trusting relationship, not excusing his conduct, setting up the dynamic of how it really went down. He had a trusting relationship with her. She was an American citizen, no desire to harm this country whatsoever. And he shared this information with her for the purpose of her getting some insights into so that she could produce a better work. Okay? This is clearly zero intention of harming the U.S. And yet, the Justice Department FBI originally went after him and recommended felony prosecution for the same exact charge that would be applicable and should be applicable to Hillary, and DOJ knocked it down. Now, the only reason FBI even went after Petraeus the way they did was because when he was first asked about it, he lied, and that irritated the FBI. And then he later admitted that he had handed the notebooks to this gal. But yet, the actual part about, leaving the lying aside, the actual part about did you compromise the security of the United States? Clearly, there was a much, much, much less probability that he was compromising the security of the United States than Hillary Clinton was by using her unsecured private device with her unsecured private server. And as Comey said in his speech where he talked about this, outside the United States, where our adversaries are employing sophisticated electronic intelligence gathering means, right? And so it is unknown to this very day whether enemies of the United States were able to actually grabbed those emails out of the air, so to speak, when she was outside of the country. How do you compare somebody who's an American citizen, who's loyal, who wants to write a book and wants to write the best book possible, so is given some insight into the intelligence community, versus somebody who had completely unsecured communications outside the United States, where she knew, as Secretary of State, that other nations employ these advanced electronic data gathering techniques?
I read a report just recently that was put out by one of the somebody that is familiar with some of the like CIA, NSA, and national intel, that says that our federal government is almost entirely certain that at least China, Russia, and Israel have all of the emails that were on her server. All the information was on that server.
There you go.
And that Vladimir Putin has suggested, without directly saying, perhaps we'll release those emails.
Yes, and a U.S. senator acknowledged the other day that he was very likely to be contacting Putin about getting those emails. So that tells you how confident the United States government is that they have them. Now, also, people may not understand. They may think that, somebody... you get this position, Omnio Cristo Santo, now you have a security clearance. It doesn't work that way.
No.
Lots of background investigation. And before it actually kicks in, you have to sign documents where you agree that you've been briefed on security protocols, you've read the law, you know what's expected, and that you agree to adhere to it. Okay? So there's no way that Hillary Clinton could claim she didn't know what the requirements were. Now, let me read the statute to you, if I may. This is the statute she should have been prosecuted under.
You may.
Title 18, Section 793, subsection F. Whoever being entrusted with having lawful possession or control of any document, writing, code book, signal book, sketch, photograph, photographic negative, blueprint, plan model, but it goes on all those things, relating to national defense, certainly Secretary of the Treasury, through gross negligence, and we're going to revisit that word in a minute, through gross negligence, permits the same to be removed from its proper place of custody, okay? And obviously, classified communications do not belong on private servers and private BlackBerries, okay? Removed from its proper place of custody or delivered to anyone in violation of this trust, okay? A server that somebody else maintains, not maintained by sanctioned individuals in the U.S. government, that's placing it there, or be lost, stolen. We just talked about that. Mm-hmm. Abstracted, destroyed, and so on. Okay, so it goes on and on, but that's the gist of it. Okay, now, negligence. Comey said we couldn't find, on the behalf of Hillary or any of her staff, any intent to violate the laws. Now, I'm going to explain to the audience why, and he knows this, Comey knows this. Another case where Comey is lying his ass off to the American people. Okay? Once a legislature, in this case Congress, has said the standard is gross negligence, intent no longer matters.
Not at all.
Let me give you a practical example. First-degree murder, premeditated intent, correct?
Yes.
Second-degree murder, commonly known to the public as crimes of passion. I didn't plan it, but I intended to do it. All right? There was no premeditation, but I intended. What is in many jurisdictions referred to as third-degree murder, okay? Gross negligence. In other words, the lack of care was so great that it rises to a criminal level.
I didn't mean to leave my elderly grandmother who can't care for herself because she's convalescing in the 110-degree heat in the car.
For 3 hours.
I just kind of forgot she was there when I drove her back from the hospital, right. Or the child or something such as that.
Right. It is lack of care. So the lack of care is so great, the lack of consideration for the factors involved is so great that it rises to a criminal offense. But first-degree murder and second-degree murder require intent because the legislature has designated gross negligence as the standard in third degree. Intent is no longer a relevant factor. And that principle...
You still committed the crime, you just didn't intend to do it.
Correct. And I share that with the audience to give them something that they're familiar with from watching crime shows and whatnot. That once gross negligence has been established by the legislature as the standard, intent is out the window. And certainly Comey knows this well.
Sure.
Now, Comey's own statement. Wrong one. Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is information that they were extremely careless in their handling of very sensitive and highly classified information. Extremely careless. You know what the other phrase for that is?
Gross negligence.
Gross negligence.
Okay, so how about this? How about anybody, any citizen of the United States, go perform a citizen's arrest on Comey for dereliction of duty.
Oh, yeah. Violation of his oath of office.
Violation of oath of office, which is perjury, another felony. Malfeasance.
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
Well, I would even say conspiracy, because I don't believe, now this is not proof, I don't have the evidence for this, but this whole song and dance with Clinton and Lynch and Comey, okay, where Lynch, I mean, come on, I would certainly never do it again. Right, because in your first year in law school, when you take an ethics class, anyone who's gotten through 1 year of law school would know not to meet with the spouse of somebody you're considering an indictment against.
I like how she says they talked about their grandkids. So, Bill, how are your grandkids? Oh, you know what? They're great. Their grandmother's about to be under indictment. I mean, what else are they going to talk about?
Well, plus, they met for 30 minutes. Two people who do not know each other personally. They know each other tangentially as professionals. They do not know each other personally. They are not personal friends. 30 minutes talking about the grandkids? Come on.
Okay, so this is the way I see it, is Loretta Lynch, if Hillary wins, Loretta Lynch is going to be a Supreme Court nominee.
Or she'll just stay in her current job.
Because
normally they replace the Attorney General.
And Comey would get the same sort of keeping his job.
He's going somewhere. Yeah. Right. If he backs the winning if he has backed the winning horse in this race, the establishment will want to do big things with Comey, because just like Petraeus, just like Keith Alexander, NSA and CIA respectively, he has stood before the American people and lied his ass off in order to protect a politician.
If they really wanted to protect her, they would charge her with a single misdemeanor and then dismiss it. Or have it as to where even a conviction is no big deal, because then you couldn't have double jeopardy on her. They left the door wide open for Trump to win and prosecute her, and prosecute Comey as well.
Yes.
And Lynch as well.
And my prediction is, should Trump win, he won't prosecute.
I hope he goes after every single one of them. And I think that somebody in the U.S. could do citizen's arrest on them and push it and see where it goes.
Yep.
We'll be right back.
We're back, and we'll be back with... What is up with... Oh, wait. I can't use that approach today because I'm not going to really rant today. I wanted to touch base on what we talked about last week. In my segment last week, I posed the question, should Dave Champion run for Nye County Sheriff? And that was predicated on some ugly rumors that already were perpetrated about me from within the Nye County Sheriff's Department, just based on the rumor floating around town that I might run for Nye County Sheriff in the upcoming election. Not this one, not where you're going to vote for president this year, but in the next election. Of course, for those who are interested in running, this is about the time that they start getting their P's and Q's together to be successful a year later, and so on. So the rumors, I guess, are timely. So after describing some of the illegal conduct of at least one deputy in the Nye County Sheriff's Department yesterday, or last week, I then posed the question, based on this kind of conduct and that deputies within the agency feel completely at liberty to act in that way, to commit policy violations, violation of their oath, violation of their trust to the public, and they don't fear any retribution at all from the current administration, and I've considered running on 2 other occasions, and for other reasons I have not, I asked, should maybe this time out I run for sheriff? And I asked for your opinion. And boy, did I get it. Between Facebook and the email address that I offered and asked you to send your response to, I received well over 200 responses, and thank you very much. Let me break down for you how I didn't count every single one. I'm not going to, it's not going to be like, 187 said, but big rough themes. About 98% were positive, very positive. Yes, absolutely do it. Now, when somebody said, don't run for sheriff, run for president, I included that as a yes, okay? However, you know, when I say, whether it's here on the show or out around town, yeah, people always say that I should be running for president. I think people maybe think I'm full of it. So I put together a little montage of just some of the comments. I didn't put all of the presidential comments in this little montage, just some of them. So go ahead and roll that for me, if you will, Noah. Okay, these are just some comments that were put on the Dave Champion's Liberty page when I asked if I should run for sheriff. And I thought it was funny because really what they're saying, I counted these again as yeses, right? You should run for president. Now, one of the last ones was really interesting. And he says that if, this is the one, I would probably move there. Thank you, Noah. And I can't tell you how many of the respondents also said that if Dave Champion were the sheriff of Nye County, they would perhaps move to Nye County. And that gets into a whole economic equation, which I find fascinating. But going back to the numbers, like I said, about 98% were absolutely, yes, do it. It would be the best thing that ever happened in Nye County. And thank you. I appreciate that sentiment. Now, there were some no's, but they weren't no as in there's something wrong with you becoming sheriff. Most of them were of the vein that it was, no, don't do it because it's not worth your time and trouble. It's going to be a lot of heartache, okay? Things like that. One of them was, that Nye County has such a history of corrupt conduct that I don't think you can straighten it out, Dave. So do something bigger. Do something beyond Nye County. So those aren't really no in the sense that, you know, hell no, we don't want you to be sheriff. No, all right. And there was only one gentleman, one out of 200 plus comments, one gentleman that said, I should absolutely not do it because I'm not the right person for the job. And that was a person with whom I'd had a debate a couple months back, and his view of the Constitution and my view of the Constitution don't jibe completely. And so because I didn't agree with him in that discussion we were having about the meaning of the Constitution, you don't understand the Constitution. You're not qualified to hold any public office in America. All right, great, whatever. So we had one kind of nutty no. We had a handful of no's that were based on do bigger, better things. Don't bring your, I'm not saying this, they are. Don't bring yourself down to the level of running for sheriff. And then just a tremendous amount of yeses, and I thank you for that. And it was interesting because it's sort of a little bellwether being able to discern, because I've had the Dave Champion's Liberty page up for some time on Facebook and DaveChampionsLiberty.com, and it was an opportunity for me to judge how, because I put things out there. My job, just like on this show, is primarily education. Sometimes I'm making a little point, a little jab, but really the main goal is education. And I would even go farther than education and say waking people up. And some of the emails that I got where people actually wrote lengthy emails to me about it were very gratifying in that several of the people said, wow, I saw one of your truck rants, and here's this crazy guy all tatted up screaming at his dashboard. But then I went to the page that you posted it on, and I started watching your other videos. I started looking at your other posts, and it's changed the way I see politics. It's changed the way I see my fellow citizens. It's changed my own paradigm to how I view my country. And that is, of course, incredibly gratifying because that's the entire purpose of Dave Champion's Liberty. So it was a great yardstick and indicator, some feedback that I get, because normally I'm putting information out. It was a wonderful sense of feedback for me, how people see the guy that's sharing that education with them. So what are your thoughts on all this, Bill?
It sounds like you need to go find yourself a campaign manager.
Perhaps so.
Yeah.
Perhaps so. I've been toying, it's funny because who knows what I may have chosen to do. But as I said last week, the fact that deputies feel they can get away with this conduct and the current administration, they know the current administration will not in any way correct their egregious behavior, in a sense, I have to look at the deputy who did that. And of course, I've cataloged on these shows many transgressions by the deputies of the Nye County Sheriff's Department, not condemning all of them in the least. Okay.
Oh, and you had a beef that you filed against one of them that was sustained.
Yes, absolutely. Tried to threaten me in a public place.
Same scumbag that arrested me illegally, and the DA said, yeah, we agree, that was an illegal arrest.
Yeah. And that particular deputy is a reservist. And firing a full-time sworn peace officer can be challenging if you don't have all your ducks in a row because of the union and the contract and so forth. You really have to make sure that you have everything buttoned down when you're going to terminate an officer.
Yeah, but if you have a reservist that's a scumbag officer and doesn't do the job right, hey, just turn in your crap and go.
That's the thing. I mean, falsely arresting you, threatening me in a public place. The current administration under Sheriff Worley should have just said, you know what, on a properly functioning agency, you have no role here. Beat it. And the guy still.
And a guy that had a shady past from the department he retired in Vegas. I mean, the guy, he at one point in time was a sergeant.
Yep.
Ran actually encouraged and ran a relatively crooked squad. And a couple of jobs were lost, a lot of suspensions were handed in, and he lost his stripes, was bumped down to PO2, and ended up finishing his time out as a detective and jacking and auto theft.
And the story that I read about what went down is his team was actually wearing T-shirts that had some language on it that could very reasonably be construed as
said BDRT, which they said big dogs run together is what it stood for, but inside that not just that squad, but within the area, they knew it stood for Baby Daddy Removal Team.
Yeah.
And what they're doing was they're harassing a bunch of single men that were going to see their kids.
Yes.
Single black men that were going to see their kids.
So everybody who owned those T-shirts knew exactly what it meant. When he was questioned for his IA, he gave an answer that was not truthful.
Yeah, and he's the one that actually ordered the damn shirts.
Right. So yes, and
so this is a reserve deputy currently on Nye County Sheriff's Department that's out riding around on a motorcycle giving speeding tickets, and what we understand to be a unit that the radar on it is not under current certification, and if you get a ticket from anybody on NCSO, just
based on
radar, go to court and say, I need to see the records that officer, that deputy on that day with that unit were all currently certified. That needs to be proven. You need to prove my guilt. And I believe that was not the case, and those units have criteria. And I believe they were not met. Those need to be proven to the court.
But the fact that the current sheriff allows that individual, amongst others, but that individual, because he's a reservist, would simply be, bye, you don't work here anymore. There's no union questions, nothing. And yet this sheriff allows this guy, who clearly is a lawbreaker, to continue to operate.
I think she's probably looking at it as somebody with 20-plus years worth of service that doesn't cost her anything. A free 20-plus year veteran.
Well, that's good because every agency needs a free dirty cop.
Yeah.
That's very beneficial. It's good for the public.
It costs us less now, maybe later. When you see my lawsuit, it's going to cost.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if this guy's going to cost whatever he's going to cost, whatever they're going to have to pay out on your suit. I mean, I'm guessing the settlement's going to be somewhere at least 1 year's salary for So how free is he, right? And if people are citizens of Nye County or Pahrump, because that's where he works, I mean, if he does dirty tricks to them, he arrests them falsely, he threatens them as he did me. I mean, what is that costing the community?
Well, let's look at it.
If I may, it creates a paradigm when you have deputies like that, where if there's wrongdoing, you better sit down and shut up. Because these pit bulls will come after you if you stand up and speak out.
Yeah, as I understand, along that line, as I understand, every member of the department of the NCSO who openly supported her opponent, Rick Marshall, in the general election, none of them are actually working there anymore. Well, one is on, I think, workers' comp injury of some kind. And I understand planning on retiring or leaving. Everyone else has already gone, either been fired or pushed into retirement or has left on their own accord. All have been run out.
Yes. And
in less than 18 months now. Well, 18 months, just about 18 months.
Simply because they had a political point of view.
Yeah.
Because they actively supported her opponent, they have now lost their careers. That is an abomination. But that's how things operate here. That's the current administration. So when we add all this up, it's like perhaps I should open an exploratory committee, which is a formal thing you do, to start looking at the possibility of running for sheriff.
I think you should.
All right.
Because, I mean, you know, the current sheriff said that she's going to be a one-term sheriff.
She did
Might
say
still
that.
be. So you might not actually be running against her, just running on the premise of we need to clean up what has been left in the wake. Keep in mind, there's only been 18 months so far. There's still 2.5 years to go.
It's a nightmare. And we'll be back.
Are we on? I think we're on. And if we are, Bill's going to start his rant right after this. You know what really grinds my gears? Corruption. Now, corruption in government, we've known that this has happened for all of human history. When the founders of this country decided to look into what sort of government do we really want to create during the Continental Congress, they wanted to come up with the Constitution. So they inevitably came up with a republic. Article 4, Section 4, it's a constitutional republic. It's not a democracy. And we always say this in the Pledge of Allegiance and to the republic for which it stands. Not to the democracy, not to the theocracy, not to the kingdom, to the republic for which it stands.
Oligarchy.
Oligarchy, yeah, thank you, Dave. So when we talk about the form of government that we have, you can also read a book called The 5,000-Year Leap, which is essentially the amount of time that our founders went through and researched human history and government so that they could try to put together the best government that they could. It was the great experiment, the best sort of government they could have to try to limit, if not completely eliminate, corruption within the government. Well, unfortunately, we've been asleep at the wheel for generations in this country, and we've allowed it to happen. We have corruption at the local level that just gets blown over. We have corruption at the state level that we don't hold accountable. We've certainly had corruption for some time at the federal level. Most recently coming out, when Comey says we're not going to charge Hillary, we have 110 felony counts that we can indict her on. Well, we can send to a federal grand jury to have submitted for indictment. And we're not going to do it. We're not going to pursue it. 110 counts of national security breaches. And we're not going to do anything. We're going to let her run for president. Some of you might actually remember in 2008, when she was running for the nomination against Barack Obama, there was a commercial that came out. And essentially, it showed a phone. It says it's 3 a.m. The phone in the Oval Office is ringing. Who do you want to answer it? And went on with how long Hillary's been around, all the things she's done, how she knows world leaders and all that other good stuff. Well, about 3 years ago, the phone rang. And that phone call was coming in from Benghazi, Libya. And that phone rang and rang and rang. As a matter of fact, that phone had begun ringing and the emails had been coming in for months in advance. It wasn't just one 3 a.m. phone call. It was a bunch of calls leading up to it. It was a bunch of emails leading up to it. It was a bunch of radio calls going out. And Hillary didn't pick up and do a damn thing. So, who do I want to have answer that phone? I can tell you who I don't want. I don't want Hillary Clinton, who shows she can't handle even in one little spot in Benghazi, Libya, let alone coming from anywhere else in the rest of the world, just in that one little area in Benghazi. I don't want her answering that phone. I don't want her having the responsibility of answering that phone. I also don't want her having the responsibility for anything. People have lost their careers. They've done the sort of things that Hillary Clinton did with this whole email server. Far, far, far less than that. People are locked up for multiple life sentences for this sort of thing. But because it's Hillary Clinton and she's connected and she's absolutely prostituted the system, They're letting her get off scot-free at this point. And, you know, we've had this down at the local level. I recall just 4 years ago last month, I made a move to arrest 3 of the members of the Pahrump Town Board, when the town board existed, because they were about to violate their oaths of office, which is perjury, by repealing Pahrump Town Ordinance, or PTO 46. Not that PTO 46 was so much that big of a deal, but the manner in which a town ordinance needs to get repealed is prescribed for in law. They were notified this days in advance. You have to follow the law. Even if you don't follow the way PTO 46 says it needs to be repealed. If you repeal it through a standard method, it still needs to be publicized. You need to have initial discussion. You need to have another meeting or 2 about it before you can even consider it. No, one fell swoop. And as soon as that vote was taken, the 3 of the town board members who made that vote, that was, let's see, it was Vicky Parker, Harley Colkin, and Tom Waters. I made a move to place them under citizen's arrest for perjury, a felony in this state. Now, the sheriff's department knew that this was a possibility, because I met earlier that day with the sheriff, the assistant sheriff, and the captain. That at the time was Tony DeMeo, Rick Marshall, and Bill Becht, in that order. And after we had our discussion, they ended up going to the DA at the time, Brian Kuzy, another guy that was basically a scumbag of a DA, in my opinion. Just didn't do his job right. Didn't do it. Didn't advise the county commission very well. Always advised them on a small segment with an interpretation for them to leave it, as the idea that he was essentially the 6th and most controlling commissioner, based on the way that he gave his legal opinion to them. Just an atrocious way of doing it. Anyhow, he told them, I don't believe Bill's going to have much of a case. My advice is you don't actually take him into custody. This is before any crime had been committed, or before I had alleged any, or before I had even spoken up, said anything about, you know what, you guys are under arrest and this is why, with full articulation. Not only did the Nye County Sheriff's Department not take them into custody, they facilitated their ability to immediately adjourn the meeting and escorted them to their vehicles to leave. That is aiding and abetting the escape of felony suspects.
Obstruction.
Which is obstruction. It's also a gross misdemeanor for police to not take someone into custody when they are able to articulate probable cause and elements to a crime. It is a gross misdemeanor for them to not take them into custody. And if they conspired to not do that, that is a felony. Conspiracy to commit any crime in Nevada is a felony. If you conspire to jaywalk with other people, that is a felony because you conspired to commit a crime. So, Dave, we're talking about corruption at all levels of government. Well, and now we're seeing the most, quite honestly, the most egregious at the federal level I've actually witnessed that's gone to the main public, that everybody now knows about.
My first thought was when you talked about 3 o'clock in the morning and the phone rang in reference to Hillary Clinton, that the question when you pick up the phone is going to be, do you know who your husband is drinking right now? I mean, that's literally what came to mind. Right? But yeah, and of course, if we bring this all back around to Comey, who has, by my standards, committed a criminal act.
Several.
Yeah, but this is also the same guy who you remember was trying to use the All Writs Act against Apple completely wrongfully, okay? This guy doesn't care. This guy has no care or concern for the law. All he wants is his way. This is the same guy.
His allegiance is to the machine.
Yeah. This is the same guy who stood up and has given several interviews and made several speeches about the terrible cost of you and I having encryption and others, you know, in America having encryption, because it's going to cause communications as far as the FBI is concerned to go dark, and we won't be able to see them. And even if we have a warrant, we can't get at them. Okay, well, in 2015, there were slightly more than 4,100 wiretaps requested, of which 0 were refused. And that's a question you need to start investigating with the courts, because do we believe that in 4,100 plus applications, every single one met the legal standard? I don't buy it, right? Nothing's that perfect, right? But yet none was refused. But more importantly, as far as federal wiretaps concerned, out of all the thousands of federal wiretaps in 2015, only 6 did the FBI encounter encryption. And in 2 of those, they easily busted the encryption. Okay. So in an entire nation of 320 million human beings, they found encryption that challenged them in some way. That doesn't mean the case is over. It just means they have to go somewhere else. They have to get at it another way, right? Like, do your job.
4 times.
4 times in a nation of 320 million people. And this is Comey wanted to outlaw encryption for the average American so that or have backdoors built in or master keys made so that the government could get in. For 4 in a nation of 320
Comey's the ultimate
million.
backdoor himself. I mean, what an a-hole. Talk about a guy who's supposed to swear to uphold, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, protecting our liberties, protecting everything about our country, when obviously he's looking at us as though we're the enemy. We're the ones that need to be watched. Right. You know something? When the administration that is in starts taking the outward focus of national security and turns it inwards.
Right.
That's when, honest to God, we need to get back to tarring and feathering, which is what happened generations ago. You literally tar and feather these sorts of folks. In other parts of the world, they lynch their politicians and their hired help for doing this sort of thing.
Right.
And I have to say, not that I'm condoning violence, but I got to say, how far are they going to be able to push the lemmings in this country before the lemmings in this country stop and say, you know, we're not putting up with this anymore? And then by what method are we going to say we're not putting up with it?
Well, let's compare. You remember the documents that were hacked and released concerning the Cayman Islands accounts? This goes back about 3 months ago, okay, maybe 4 months ago. All these officials all across the world that have hidden accounts in the Caymans, right? Iceland, they had tens of thousands of people protesting in the streets. And the Prime Minister of Iceland had to step down because his name was on that list because he had a bank account in the Caymans. Now, compare that to what just went down with a conspiracy, Hillary's original offense, and then a conspiracy between Bill Clinton, Lynch, and Comey, all to avoid a criminal conspiracy, all to avoid applying the law properly. You know, we already discussed in segment 1 why this statute is completely appropriate to be applied to Hillary in this case. And they all conspired to commit a felony to avoid prosecuting her. In Iceland, they made the person step down.
In Iceland, they also have, as I understand, kicked out the World Bank, zeroed out the national debt, and are literally going to citizen-induced liberty.
Yeah. And instead of bailing out the banks in Iceland, like we did here, they didn't bail them out. They put the bankers in jail.
Yeah.
Because they said the only way for bankers to understand you can't treat the people of this country this way is to put you in jail so that your predecessors understand they'll go to jail if they do that too. But in this country, what do? We allow those executives to reap billions of dollars in salaries and
bonuses.
Bonuses, thank you. And then after they've taken their billions, then the taxpayers give them trillions so that their companies can continue.
Perhaps Iceland is the new bastion of liberty. I think you and I should maybe catch a flight up there and see what's going on.
Certainly the will of the people is far more respected in Iceland than it is in America. But maybe America's just got, as you said, a lemming problem.
Who knows how much we're going to take? We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is segment 4, and we're going to get right into the carpet update. The carpet has now been here working on month 8. We're into month 8 of the brand new studio carpet being rolled up and laid off to the side and not actually installed. Month 8. I think you could have watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos and borrowed the tools to install them within like maybe day 8.
Right.
Let alone month 8. But that's where we are. So with that shame being laid out there, our own little jab at the studio.
The carpet of shame.
The carpet of shame. This is segment 4 where we go through your emails, which we're going to do in just a couple of minutes. You can always send those emails to us to daveandbillshow@gmail.com. You can also go online and see our all of our history, all of the shows we've done so far, which we've done a bunch. I am a few shows back in uploading them to this site, totallyunprepared.info.
What?
I am. You know, I usually have been busy. I've been doing a lot of work, donate my time in some other areas, and I've had my kids around, and we like to do stuff in June. It's like, you know, school's out, let's go do a bunch of stuff. We went camping and all over, just trips in and out of Vegas doing fun stuff, and
nice.
you know, so yeah, I'll get to it. Yeah, don't you worry. You can always find us on YouTube, too.
Oh, and we have a
find
Facebook
link
presence.
there. And Facebook presence as well. So with that being said,
Idaho?
yeah, let's talk about the young Muslim male with the backpack in Idaho that jumped up on a table in a bar wearing the backpack, shouting about how great Allah is.
Yeah. Now,
that would scare the living crap out of most people. And I got to tell you, we'll get into that, but I'll tell you how I would have done it.
okay.
Go ahead.
Well, let's go back. It's a nice family restaurant that has an adjacent bar where you can go and wait to be seated in a small town in Idaho. And in the bar, drinking is a Muslim. Let me repeat those two elements.
Muslims are not supposed to drink,
yes.
So you know.
Yes. Now, in America, by the way, a fair amount of Muslims do drink. I mean, it's kind of like, what's the old joke? You know, if you want to keep your beer around.
You can't take one Mormon fishing.
Right.
You always got to take two, because
two.
if you only take one, they're going to drink your beer.
Right. It's kind of the same
Yeah.
similar thing with there are Muslims who simply don't believe in that prohibition. They don't believe that's a valid prohibition in their faith.
I know Jewish folks that'll go out and have a ham sandwich without batting an eye.
There you go. So anyway, this guy gets a few drinks. Now, mind you, he's got a backpack, which I think is really the salient point in this.
Yes,
right?
that's the big deal.
And he jumps up on the bar counter and he starts screaming, Allah is the one and only true God, right? Now, this started.
Now, how many other people have done that?
Right, and what happens next?
Well, they end up in pieces because their bomb vest or bomb backpack goes off.
Right.
And by the way, I hate the term suicide bomber.
Yeah.
It's a homicide bomber.
Absolutely.
If your intent is you're going to blow up, it's like kamikaze. Kamikazes were not there to kill themselves. Otherwise, they could have flown straight into the sea or into each other. They flew into American and Allied ships. That was what they were doing. These people, if they want to blow themselves up, they can go in the back of their hut and blow themselves up.
Right.
Their intent is, in the process of them blowing up, cause as much death and injury as they can on their own. They're homicide bombers.
And as much as we have heard, especially in the last year, about bombings and shootings and so forth committed around the world against civilian targets by Muslim men. Okay. And you know me well, Bill. I have nothing against Muslims. This is a political action. And 99% of the Muslims who commit these acts...
Yeah, you're not an anti-Muslim collectivist.
No. Most of these Muslims who are committing these acts are coming out of a part of the world where the United States has gone there and invaded their countries without justification and killed millions of their people. And they're fighting back the only way they can, because if they try and fight back against us in a traditional military battlefield type...
It's not going to happen.
Right. They'll be dead before they even take a single step. So for them, they perceive this as their only way to fight back. I'm not condoning it. I'm simply saying
explaining.
I understand the dynamics of it. But nevertheless, those people who are coming in with AKs and blowing the place, shooting the place up and throwing bombs at people and pulling their homicide vests, overwhelmingly, the events that have at least garnered mass media attention are conducted by young Muslim men. So my thing is, when a dark-skinned, we're just fitting the profile, right? A dark-skinned, swarthy, young Muslim man carrying some sort of container, in this case a backpack, suddenly jumps up and starts screaming the equivalent of Allah Akbar, I don't think, and by the way, everybody ran like hell out of the restaurant, okay? And the owner and I think the manager wrestled the guy to the ground. Somebody grabbed the backpack and they threw it out in the alley and they held this guy down. And
which, by the way, tactically speaking, you don't remove the backpack.
No.
Because most of the time they have some sort of a cord or switch on there where if it's removed from their body, boom.
Yeah.
So that's...
Well, by then the backpack might have, when they dragged him down, it might have fallen off to the side. But
perhaps.
But nevertheless...
As a go-to move, avoid that.
Right. And you're not talking about people who are trained. But what started this hullabaloo, and the reason I brought it to your attention for today's show, was because my comment upon this was, if you conduct an action which typically is followed by a bloodbath, there's a backpack. You got the backpack. You stand up. Allah Akbar. I'm coming out. Press one right here, right through the head box, to shut your brain housing unit down so you can't do the next thing. So when I said this, somebody jumped on. This is on social media. Oh, I can't believe you just shoot somebody for being drunk and expressing their political view, or their religious view. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's like, it's got nothing to do with that.
That ain't it.
It's no different than somebody takes a plastic toy squirt gun that's black, walks up to a bunch of cops and pulls it out and points it at them.
That's like saying,
you know what's going to happen next.
You know, like, I can't believe you'd knock somebody on their ass for just ordering dinner when the ordering dinner is getting up in their face. I told you, you know,
right.
You knock somebody out for that. So my response would be the same thing. I would actually go with the standard Israeli terrorist interdiction response, which is 2 to the head, because if you're ready to follow up after the first shot, if it doesn't make it, you'll take the second one.
Sure.
So that's the whole mantra. If they do it right the first time, there's no second shot to take because somebody's piled up into the heap that they once were.
Right. Yeah. So I was just shocked that anyone would not understand the rational thought process of carrying some sort of a container, standing up in a public place and screaming about Allah, what any rational person would imagine comes next.
This guy was pretty lucky. This happened in Idaho.
Yes, he was lucky.
Idaho, very conservative state, very pro-gun state, very liberty-minded state, very don't tread on me kind of state.
Very much so.
And that this guy avoided getting shot is what's kind of crazy to me. But it actually shows, even in conservative, gun-toting, don't tread on me, liberty-minded Idaho, even there, in a bar and restaurant full of people, evidently nobody had a gun, or nobody had a gun who was trained and willing to use it.
Right.
Because nobody even held a gun on the guy, while others might have been tackling him.
Nope.
So I don't see that happening in our little town of Pahrump because far too many people carry far too often.
Oh, yes.
Speaking of that, actually, I got to say, I ran into a guy, I saw a guy in our local mall, which we know is Walmart.
Right.
Went to the mall to go shopping around the entire fair, and there was a guy that was in there that was carrying exposed, which I'm like, hey, cool. However, what I noticed pretty quickly was it was one of those nylon-like bucket holsters with no retention at all, and in it was a high point. So if you know anything about guns at all,
high class across the board here. Yeah.
High point is the biggest piece of crap handgun probably made and sold in America.
Except maybe the Raven and the Jennings back in the day.
Okay, well, that's back in the day. I'm talking right now.
Yeah.
You can spend, I don't know that you can spend less money than you can on a high point. I don't know that your reliability can be less than it is with the high point. And I had this discussion with a guy I know who actually he carries a badge in Clark County through his work. And he digs the high point. Hey, it's American made. You don't have to spend a lot of money on it. You know what? There's a reason you're not spending a lot of money. You get what you pay for.
I've never understood that logic when it comes to a firearm.
You actually used to say, I can't imagine anybody spending thousands of dollars on a high-end 1911 until you got one.
When did I ever say that?
You said that before you got it. And then afterwards you came to me and you said, now I get it, when you got your Red Brown.
It must have been, no, probably when I got my Nighthawk Predator.
Okay, that was it then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you still have that?
That was my, yes, I do. That was a gift to myself for leaving California.
There you go.
Yeah, because of the firearms laws, and how insane they are. I moved out of California, moved here, and that was my present to myself because I did not have a very high-end 1911.
You had told me this when you still lived in California and you were coming out and traveling and doing training. And because I was talking about one of our other mutual friends that had gotten a Nighthawk. Yeah, it's a beautiful gun. I just can't see it till you go. And then you told me, now I know.
Because I was running,
now I get it.
At the time, I was running about a $1,400 1911.
Which is easy to do.
Yeah. And it was a great gun.
Yeah.
I can't take anything away from it.
Yeah. So anyhow, with that being said, this guy, he's walking around in the nylon holster, which is no retention at all, not even like just with Kydex where it snaps around the
in other
trigger
words,
guard.
You could just walk up next to him and do this and pull it out.
And it's a crappy gun you wouldn't want to steal anyhow unless you want to use it as a threat. So anyhow, my thing is this. I applaud the guy and others who are going to carry a gun, but carrying a gun and not being trained and knowing how to use it is about as effective as buying a piano and then going out on a concert tour. It just does not work. You have to learn how to use it properly. You need proper training. And proper training is not like learning how to drive, where you go out with somebody who knows how to drive, a friend or relative. This is how you drive. Far too many people learn how to shoot from their dad, their uncle, their older brother, their grandpappy, a lot of women from their boyfriends. Oh, my boyfriend was in the Navy. There's like 6 people in the Navy who shoot guns, and they're all SEALs. What is this guy's job? Oh, he was a cook on a destroyer. Okay, don't have that guy teach you how to shoot. Right. So go to proper people who actually, even if they're not certified, if they are professional trainers, some sort of certification is obviously usually nice just to
quote
show
James
it.
Suarez, the training horsepower is in the private sector.
Absolutely. Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
The public training is horrible.
People perceive it's government that knows what they're doing, and
it's not the case.
like everything else.
We'll be back next week.
See you later.